TSN and Barnburner. Hockey insider Darren Dreger. Good morning, Dregs.
Hey guys, good morning. Lot going on this morning. I'm just going to say
we haven't even gotten to the Rangers shitstorm. That's insane. What's
happening.
I
know. So if I look distracted, I normally sound distracted. I can appreciate that. Every Friday I feel like I get 1,000 things going on, but today, there's a lot going on. But I'm here for it, man. I mean, we always talk about the idea of trade scenarios and bigger names in play and all that, and it almost never comes to fruition in the first half of the regular season. But the stuff that, we saw happen between Columbus, Minnesota with Juracek going to the Wild, and now everything swirling around the New York Rangers, it's not just made up. It's not trade fodder. It's not speculation. This is legit, real hands-on stuff. So if you're in the insider world, kind of gets the juices flowing. It's a good day.
We'll get to the Rangers stuff just because we were talking about the firing of Luke Richardson with the Chicago Blackhawks. And like I would say, there's not necessarily a parallel, but you go back when Kane and Taves are young and Denny Savard gets let go. But Joel Quenneville is an established NHL guy. He comes in, and then, as we know, the rest is kind of history.
Right.
Were you a little surprised about this? Like we were saying, what are the expectations? Are they performing so far below expectations? Are they that unhappy? I guess just thoughts on that, and now where they go from here.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of all of the above. Where they go from here is with Sorensen until the end of the year. At least that's what Blackhawks management is sharing to those in trust publicly. And then they'll look at what the open market presents. I mean, right now, if you want to look at it, Todd McClellan is out there. He's interviewed for a bunch of different jobs, still hasn't got hired. Jay Woodcroft, got dispatched early by the Edmonton Oilers. Again, I'm told he's an excellent interview. Hasn't been hired. Joel, you talked about him. But I think what a lot of teams are going to do, and I want to lump Boston into this mix, hey, maybe Joe Sacco earns the job outright with the work that he does in Boston. If not, then you again look at the open market in the offseason. What if Pittsburgh doesn't continue to grow the way they are right now, right? Could we see a Mike Sullivan pop into play at the end of the year? I think you could. I'm not predicting that happening, but I think it's plausible, obviously, given everything that's gone on with the Penguins. So maybe that's what these teams are holding out hope for. But to just bring it back to Chicago, I understand the business has been in a long, long time. And I understand that as a general manager, again, based on what I said a couple of minutes ago about how difficult it is to make meaningful trades. So one of the few options you have is firing your coach. But when you do it once and then you do it twice or you do it multiple times, guess what? You chip away at your own foundation as general manager of that organization. So, Kyle Davidson didn't want to fire Luke Richardson. I'm sure there was a level of pressure on him from above. Chicago is a win now kind of market, even though we know where the Blackhawks sit in their rebuild. But it also feels like a little bit of inexperience at play here, because what I know of Luke Richardson, good coach. And I expect that Luke will be on a bench, maybe not this year. I mean, I think he's got another year left in his deal. But because of the pressure, because of Kyle's inability, and I'm not blaming him, it's just so hard. That roster is flawed. That's not Luke Richardson's fault. I mean, the crown jewel, as we know, is Connor Bedard. He's sagging a little bit in his play this year. So I think it just all compiled. But it kind of feels like the next hire in Chicago, and I said this on Toronto and Montreal radio this morning, and I'm not advocating for Ken Holland, but it feels like they need a little bit more experience in senior management or above in Chicago to steer this thing the right way. And maybe that's, Davidson stays on as general manager, but you bring in a guy like Kenny who's decorated and he occupies the president's role, and you try and get the multiple pieces that are going to be part of a puzzle, including the hiring of a coach in the offseason. We'll see what they do.
That's interesting parallels too. When Ken Holland came into Edmonton, they had more pieces than Chicago, but they were in that we've got a young superstar. How are we not more competitive? There's some similarities there. That's interesting you float his name.
Well, only because I'm looking around the league and I'm seeing what other teams have done. Look at the Montreal Canadiens, right? As their rebuild kicked into gear, they hired Jeff Gorton. And then Jeff Gorton hired an agent who he trusted deeply in Kent Hughes. Well, it's a two-headed monster. It's a very difficult job to manage everything that you have to manage around an NHL organization. So when you've got experience and you've got a proven resume like that, and hey, look, Kenny Holland wants to be with a club again. I'm not so sure he wants to take on a mammoth task of, again, getting the Chicago Blackhawks back on the rails. But to your point, when you've got some good, young, talented assets to work with to potentially expedite a retool, renovation, rebuild, maybe that does keep the juices flowing for him. We'll see. Nobody's told me that. It just, when I saw that, I went, holy smokes. Like, that doesn't seem like a Kyle Davidson decision. That seems like the Wirtz family or someone above saying, okay, our ticket sales are going off the rails here, whatever. We got to do something to show the fan base that we're paying attention. And sorry, Luke, but that's on you. You're getting the crosshairs here.
Well, I'm kind of laughing because we all know what it's like in crazy sports markets.
Yeah.
From afar, we can sit here. It's like, well, Bedard is sagging. You go to the markets, they're stunting his growth. They're ruining this kid, right? Like, he's cooked. You can fly off the head. Okay, well, they got to fire the coach. So, we move on. Crazy morning in Manhattan. Or did you want to?
No, and I was going to, what you're bringing up, I just was going to say, is that ownership as well?
Yeah.
It's got to be.
Chris Drury, hardline stance. Jacob Trouba, we've heard his name for almost a year now, going back to last year. He's the captain. He's basically it looks like he's been told to stay home, accept the trade, or get ready for waivers. Jeez. It looks like this ends messy for the Rangers and Trouba.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's messy already. It's not how it's going to end. It's been messy for a long time. Yeah. And I guess what I wonder about here is I have an appreciation for both sides. I do understand and appreciate the cutthroat approach here by Chris Drury and the New York Rangers. But you know what? You doled out the contracts and, you gave the players the money. You gave the players the contract protection that they had. Now, granted, Kreider and Jacob Trouba, some of that protection was lifted around July 1st, I guess, when they had to submit their 15-team no trade. But it feels like what's going on here now today is a sense of, okay, Columbus wants you. Detroit is trying to figure out how they make the money work. There's rumor of Buffalo. There's rumor of the Anaheim Ducks kicking tires on this guy. Well, I mean, I haven't talked to Kurt Overhart, who represents Jake Trouba or Trouba directly. We know that his preference was to go west, but it was to go west in the offseason. If he's not willing to accept a trade to Columbus because they're on his no-fly zone or any of the teams that I mentioned, if you're Chris Drury, what stops you from going, okay, well, then I'm putting you on waivers at 2:00 Eastern.
And they did it with Barclay Goodrow, right? Just to remind people.
Oh, yeah. It happened with Goodrow not that long ago, last June, right?
Yeah, and that's almost an identical thing, right? He had no trade, but not a no move.
Yeah.
So he said, fine, we'll put you on waivers. And then he got claimed. So,
but again, this is the swagger of the brand of the New York Rangers and the great city that New York can be for some, not for everybody, for some. And I'm talking about players here, right? Because I would think, Rhett, correct me if I'm wrong, players talk a lot. And, now there's this fantasy out there that, well, maybe Jacob Trouba is a bad dude.
Yeah.
And that's BS.
Yeah.
He's not that. He's a hard-working player. His game may not be what it once was, but he's still a very effective player. And I'm told he's a terrific leader. He's an excellent captain, right? So then why would you want to do that to a player like that? Because you don't think that gets around? Of course it gets around. Yeah. Players talk about that stuff and free agency rolls around. And if you don't have the lure of Manhattan working in your corner, why the hell would you go there? And you don't think Igor Shesterkin is sitting there going,
exactly. Yeah. I'm sickened by this. Yeah. This is disgusting to me. They didn't have to go and do it this way. Now that's a good point about Trouba. And if he's not, but you have to handle this completely different. You're blowing up a team that went to the semifinals last year.
Yeah.
And for what? These guys are going to get pissed and
struggling right now too, though. That's probably part of it. Hey,
yeah,
Greg?
But that's basically
since these rumors came out. To be fair.
Yeah, but look, again, we always think of contract extensions, especially when you're talking about top-end guys, and Igor Shesterkin, as we know, is elite. And you're looking at the 8-year maximum contract he might get from the New York Rangers. Well, they've offered that. It's been speculated on what the money might look like. You think Igor Shesterkin and his agent are sitting there going, "Ooh, well, you know, we gotta find a way because that 8th year matters. That 8th year doesn't mean a damn thing. Doesn't mean anything. You know, he goes to the open market. Okay, he gets a maximum 7 years, but maybe it's to a team that has a tax friendlier, scenario. So he's getting money back there, and he's going to bet on himself. He's going to say, "Okay, I feel like I look after myself. I'm going to be great for the next 7 years. And then I'm going to sign a 1-year deal with the team of my choice when that deal expires for $10 million or whatever it is. And I'll reap
$130 million dregs. He can say whatever he wants."
Exactly. So that's why I always, when people speculate and talk about, "Oh no, but the Rangers are the only team that can hold them for 8 years. So they have the hammer." No, that's not the way Igor Shesterkin is thinking. That's not the way his agent is thinking. And Igor Shesterkin, even though I'm sure, the Russian players love New York, right? Yeah. They just love. He doesn't want to go anywhere. So, in and of itself, that might be enough. But from what I understand, what I'm told, he's a heck of a teammate as well. And I'm pretty sure he's not liking what's going on with Jake Trouba, with Chris Kreider, with now Zibanejad's name is out there. I mean, go down the list.
None of it makes sense to me. Again, I go back to they've built this team. They've had success. They've got a superstar goaltender. They go to the semifinals last year. Kreider was Messier revered last year in the playoffs. Now you got 3 of their top guys, and yeah, they're older, but that's what good teams have is the older guys could be stars on your team. Now, none of them are any good.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Like, what is going on in that? Like, it doesn't make sense other than an owner that's pissed off. Is the room falling apart? Did something go on in the room? Because those are the things that the only questions or concerns that might cause something like this.
Yeah, and look, this is just me, and I've never been inside a room in a playing capacity, so I don't understand it. But I think back in the day, Rhett, when you played, and I got to choose my words carefully because I'm not trying to, sewer any of today's player, but you can hold players. Yeah, but you can hold players accountable in different ways back in your day, right? Where you could say something to a player, a coach to a player, a GM, any of that, and it would be hurtful. Like it would be downright hurtful. But you'd find a way as a group if you had good leadership to pull it all together. And it almost didn't matter at times what the coach was saying or certainly not what the media was saying. You just find a way if you had a good core to pull yourself out of the muck. And I think that today's player is a bit more sensitive to that. But I think that this is also then a misread by Rangers management to think that taking this approach with Trouba and with Kreider and Zibanejad and some of the others, and the only reason why is because they have contracts like Keandre Miller and other guys that they've got to address from a cap perspective, right? Okay. But isn't that a big misread from just a cultural perspective to think that those guys and what you're doing to these guys and their families isn't going to matter to the rest of the group? I don't know how it can.
I can't think of a team treating their captain this poorly. Like maybe I'm missing something in history, but like this is their captain, and he's been hanging on a flagpole for 6 months.
I was okay with it at the draft in the offseason.
You have to talk business.
Yeah, I mean, okay, at that point he had a no move, so he controls the process. But again, you can have those conversations as a general manager. In fact, you're obligated to have those conversations regardless of what the contract protection is. But this has just been nasty.
And is it just about contracts and moving forward? And if it is, then you've effed that up on your own. Like that's a on your plate type of deal. And now you're gonna. So it's Zibanejad and Kreider and Trouba.
Those are the guys. Well, Capo, Kako, Lindgren. I mean, go down the list. I think that Drury is, aside from what we could project to be just guys that are unavailable. That seems to be the growing list that they're swirling around. But again, try and make sense of it. I still think Jacob Trouba has game, and I do think that's why there is some interest. The money that's attached to him makes it apprehensive and difficult for any top team to engage. But Chris Kreider was just named to Team USA in the Four Nations face-off, which could be the Team USA of all Team USAs, given the talent pool that they. So he's one of the best American players in today's game, but he's not a guy that you want to continue to build on with the New York Rangers.
This is my question too. Then, right? Like, is it moves right now to help them win today?
It's got to be. They're in their win.
A little of both, I think. Yeah, little.
And everyone else in the league is going, wait a minute, what's going on in New York?
Yeah. Well, and that's how it gets to guys like me, right? Is then you get other club execs are like, something going on with Kreider off ice.
What am I missing?
Like, what's going on here? Like, okay, maybe a bit of a slow start, but lots of guys on that Ranger team haven't played up to their standard, but that doesn't mean you throw them out there in a text message that offers them up as a trade option. Like, what's going on?
Finals. You're like,
I saw someone mentioning online this morning is, well, how could Drury do this? Well, he was the captain and he got bought out. Yeah. So and then there's James Dolan, right? He is Dolan is, remember, he cleaned out the front office because they wouldn't send out a press release the right way or the way he wanted it. I think there's a lot of layers there, but I think everybody is definitely on the same page that this is seems, especially for a guy who hasn't run a foul. His play has maybe dropped off, but that happens to every player.
Yeah.
It's pretty aggressive.
It's also headed into bizarro land now too, right? Like Larry Brooks, who's an honored Hall of Famer, excellent reporter for the New York Post, entrenched with, the New York Rangers, kind of weirdly floated the Brady Tkachuk rumor, right?
Yes.
Well, I didn't see it, but I was alerted to it. And then almost immediately my phone rings and the Ottawa Senators are like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That is not true, not happening. We've got nothing going on with the New York Rangers. But again, Boomer, you talked about how it's getting messy in New York. Now it's messy, and it appears that the Rangers wanted to get messy in other cities and other franchises.
Well, and you know what? I'm looking at the Metro, and Rhett gives me a hard time because I keep talking about the Capitals. I just can't believe they're doing what they're doing. They're tied for the lead in the Metro. So you've got Washington, New Jersey, and Carolina all with 17 wins, 36, 36, 35 points. Rangers are back at 27.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If they can't catch that top three, then they're fighting for a wild card.
But you have to have faith in your team, right? This team has been very good for a number of years. If at the start of the year, I don't know if you went to Bet365 and looked at the odds of winning a cup, it's not like they were in the bottom third.
No, they'd be top
this
five.
Is a very talented squad, and I to me, it feels like sitting in Calgary on not paying that close, but from the outside looking in, it looks like a group that has the owners. There's a big disconnect between what ownership, management want and what guys in the room are trying to do.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Dolan family and James Dolan, I mean, we know he's a very hands-on owner. And hey, when you've got the bucks that he has, and he invests deeply here, like it's not like these guys are treated poorly. All the creature comforts are top shelf. Tops in the National Hockey League around MSG. They really are. So he does invest and expects a contending team on a year in and year out basis. Now that's unrealistic. We know how cyclical it can be in the NHL. I guess, again, if I were a player, what would disappoint me the most isn't this the time? Most general managers, Craig Conroy included, and I mean, this guy, Connie's a media-friendly dude. He is. But most general managers try and pick their spots when it comes to meeting with the media. I know Kevin Adams, either he just met or was about to meet with media in Buffalo, just because, right? There were some requests. Maybe the better approach by Drury would have been meet the media like 2-3 weeks ago. Just meet the media. Yeah, we're not happy. Explain what your situation is, what you're trying to do, the pressures that you're facing, and maybe show the room that you got their back.
Yes.
As a GM, I've got your back. Don't believe what you read out there. Of course, we're open to everything. And maybe if the right deal is presented, we're going to have to make what could be perceived as an unpopular decision. But until that happens, I believe in this group because I know what this group is capable of. Instead, you've got all of this kind of seedy business happening around this team, and it's a tough one. It's a tough
respected Cup winner, Barclay Goodrow, with a no trade. They backdoor him through waivers to San Jose, get him where they want him to go. Captain, 6+ months being hung out to dry by the organization. A guy that's been a great soldier, great teammate, and is still a year and a half away from free agency. And now you go drop through, the most connected journalist around your team, Brady Tkachuk's name in the media. Like,
yeah,
I understand it's New York, but there'll be a lot of agents pissed off at Chris Drury for the last few weeks here.
Well, and look, Brady Tkachuk will be pissed off. The Tkachuk
unless wants out of there, yeah.
How do you just decide that you can do that? Well, I'm going to target a guy on another team. What?
Yeah, and look, I'm sure that Steve Stales and Travis Green, and I think I saw Ian Mendez, who is now head of PR for the Ottawa Senators, tweet his definition of whopper, which is one of the words that Brooks used in his tweet, and it's not very flattering. But anyway, now they're putting out fires in Ottawa, right? And I'm sure Stales is going to have to go down the hall, or Travis is going to have to go back to Brady and say, look, we have no idea where this is coming from. However, it's not true. And, every time Brady's name is surfaced, that's what we do, right? You got to source it out. You got to make sure that what is being speculated is true or it's untrue. You don't always have to report on it, but every time we've checked, because there's been a few Brady Tkachuk rumors in the last year plus, the message is always the same. He's not looking to get out of Ottawa. He's not. He's looking to be the leader that he is in leading this team into the playoffs and then beyond. Now, that could change in a year or two with the contract and everything else. That happens. That is the business side of the NHL. But to get dropped out there like this in that fashion, that's tough on the player.
Curious about Vancouver. We talked about them, I think it was maybe yesterday. I was kind of, JT Miller and with Thatcher Demko kind of uncertain, and these guys
chronic.
Well, it's what happens when those guys come back. They've been doing okay without them. I guess hearing anything on JT Miller, we see his inclusion on the Four Nations roster for the Americans, and it sounds like Demko is actually close.
Sure. Yeah, but it's been sounding that way for a while. I've stopped asking about Thatcher, and this isn't a knock on him. I think like a lot of clubs, they want to make sure that they give him as much time as humanly possible. And last time I checked, which is probably going on 10 days now, a management source there told me he just needs more reps to get up to speed. Well, I don't know how many more reps the guy needs to get up to speed, but they're obviously not going to push him. I wasn't surprised to see JT Miller's name on the U.S. roster. And I mean, it would have been on there automatically, regardless of his play this year. Just historically, he's the driver. He is, and they expect it to be a real competitive tournament. But without knowing that they got to JT directly, I'm sure they did. That's just the style of Billy Guerin. I mean, reportedly, didn't he fly to Detroit to have the face-to-face with Patty Kane to say, here's why we don't have you on? I mean, that's just a class act by an NHL GM and the GM of Team USA. I think they feel like automatically if JT is back and he's good to go and everybody believes, including JT, that he will be back, he should be on that team. Okay, and in terms of the chronics out on the back end, are they looking for D, or are they just going to have to go the many, weeks, months without? Yeah, it's weeks for sure. What they say, 8 weeks? Mm-hmm. They're definitely in the market for a defenseman. For sure they are. Maybe this gives them a little bit more flexibility to do a little bit more big game hunting. But again, when we look at the available D, it's real tough to pinpoint. There's some interesting, intriguing names out there. Ristolainen with the Philadelphia Flyers, although Philadelphia is back in the mix again. They're shopping for high-level return on asset. But the Roanoke situation does amplify it a little bit I would say, going into the season. The Vancouver Canucks were a team that were looking for an upgrade on defense and wanted to add, worst case, the third line center. And I don't think that anything has changed there. So on the short term, they're going to have to work with what they have internally. But no doubt, Patrick Galvin is in a lot of conversations.
How are the Leafs out there? We don't talk about them a whole ton, but boy,
because they're not struggling. It doesn't matter to you guys when they win. You just like when they're
true.
on the mat. They're doing pretty well, to be fair. I mean, you know, we saw the show that Marner and Matthews put on against the Nashville Predators in the third period. I mean, Berube finally put them back together, and they took off like a rocket in that third period. So they'll match up tonight. I'm sure they'll be the first line out against the Washington Capitals. Injury-wise, that's the only thing that's kind of giving it to the Leafs right now. But they should get Domi back next week, Bobby McMahon back next week. I believe McCabe was back on the ice today, but I'm not sure how he feels and whether he'll be ready to go tonight.
No, the reason I ask is we were kind of Nazem Kadri's name comes up and linked there, so of course we're gonna be asked about it and kind of deal with it. And it's I don't know how we were talking. I don't know how that trade gets made. Who's helping compensate who's helping who, and and is that where they need the help?
Yeah, I was saying the D and goaltending has been very good. Now, is it unsustainably good? Is that the strength of the team? Is second line center their biggest need? We kind of batted that around. You see more than we do.
Yeah, I don't see second line center. I think a 3-4, like a fourth line guy, a fourth line center who can play, third line minutes when needed might help them. They've got a lot of time for the kid Fraser Minton called up from the American League right now, so they may have that option internally moving forward. But Treliving's going to have his hands full. I just mentioned all those guys that are coming back. It feels to me that Toronto long-term can have the likes of Nick Robertson, Connor Dewar, and Pontus Holmberg in their lineup. I mean, with the depth that they have, that's just not good enough. So I do think third, fourth line center is something they'll look at. And Calgary's not going to do that. I just don't know. Like if Calgary's doing that, it's because they're getting Easton Cowan or somebody, that is going to help them longer term. And I just don't know why the Flames would consider anything like that.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, Kadri signs here because he's sold that they're a contender, and they literally packaged Sean Monahan, who's a hurt bag at the time, with a first to make the room for Kadri. It was a short-term work contender move. Now, it didn't pan out that way, but he's now locked into a 7-year deal in a market where they're in the very early stages of a rebuild, whatever R word you want to use. I just wonder at what point, he's 34. There's going to be diminishing returns as we move forward. His best self is probably right now. Like, maybe wouldn't he rather be on a contender? And how do you make that deal happen with the term left?
Yeah, and I think he would have to initiate that, he being Nazem. And every time I've checked with the agent Darren Ferris, because these rumors do surface, right? Yeah. Fairly frequently, I would say. And based on what you've just presented, there's reason to wonder about that. But the message that I get back is no, he likes Calgary. He's not looking for a change. Now, if you get closer to March 7th and the Flames are a non-playoff team and there's a legit Stanley Cup contender that has interest, maybe his view is different. But as we have the conversation today, I don't get that sense. But a lot can change in a short period of time. Yeah,
that makes sense. I think Connie's whole stance on everything is just play out and have to make decisions by early March.
Agreed.
Yeah, for Conroy, it's like vacation time compared to last year.
Oh my God, last year.
The phone calls he'd have been having for all those UFAs, right? This is a breeze for Connie for sure.
I got $9 a year.
Yeah. And Connie's working, right? I mean, all general managers are, but I checked in with Calgary this morning just because, hey, I always want to be fresh. I always want to be on top of it for you guys, right? Now it's dead quiet, and we know what he's looking for. He's looking for a center, to augment what he has, not to backfill what he might do. And anything of value just isn't out there, isn't available right now.
Appreciate you. How'd things out at the lake? Did we get things taken care of? I never did.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, more or less. Waiting for a part though. So they've got most of the issue resolved. So the pipes aren't freezing. None of that is happening. But there is a part on back order that the plumber assures me will. Zimmer's his last name, by the way.
Of course,
yeah, must be. Yeah.
Are they snowmobiling that in? How does that get to you?
What's that?
They snowmobiling the part in or what?
Well, it's coming from Brandon. Yeah, it could be. It's coming from Brandon, so you never know.
Hey,
certainly not Canada Post.
Careful. Yeah, you never know. You know what? They'll have all that insulation and that to keep the pipes from freezing. It'll be in by March.
Yeah, perfect.
No problem.
It better be in before that.
Have a great weekend, and I know you'll be chasing all these rumors. Good luck with that.
All right, guys. You too. Have a good weekend.
There you go. Darren Dreger, TSN Hockey Insider, our insider here on the Insider Hotline.
Hey, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And, of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.